The government officials wouldn't look me in the eye. 3 men in dark suits sat across the metal table, their faces a careful blank as they slid the mission folder toward me. The room felt cold, one of those windowless concrete boxes buried in the bowels of a Coast Guard facility where classified conversations happened. "This is a priority retrieval, Chief Chen," said the one in the middle, a thin man with close-cropped gray hair. "Time-sensitive. Eyes only." I opened the folder and scanned the first page. A fishing vessel? The Northern Star went down 3 days ago in unusually deep waters. No survivors. I kept reading. Coordinates placed it in the Challenger Deep area of the Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles down. My heart beat faster. "You want me to dive the bubble?" I said. It wasn't a question. The thin man nodded once. "You're the most qualified rescue diver with the necessary clearance." The bubble, the military's newest deep-sea submersible prototype. I'd trained on it for months, but it had never been deployed for an actual mission. Something about this didn't add up. "With respect, sir, this isn't a rescue mission if there are no survivors. And the Challenger Deep? That's beyond extreme depth. What's so important about this fishing boat?" The 3 men exchanged glances. "There's an artifact on board," the man on the right finally said. He looked younger than the others, with round glasses that caught the harsh fluorescent light. "It needs to be recovered immediately." "What kind of artifact?" "That information is compartmentalized, Chief Chen." The middleman's voice stayed perfectly flat. "Your job is recovery, not analysis." I closed the folder and tapped my fingers on its surface. "You're asking me to take an experimental submersible to one of the most dangerous environments on Earth for an object you won't even describe. The mission parameters are clear. You'll have technical support from the vessel's pilot, Marcus Reeves, and systems specialist Parker Collins." The thin man stood up, signaling the end of our discussion. "The bubble is being prepped as we speak. You deploy in 4 hours." I should have asked more questions, should have pushed harder. But I'd been in the Coast Guard long enough to recognize when orders came from way above my pay grade. 4 hours later, I stood on the deck of the USS Hawthorne, staring at the bubble. Despite its cute name, it was an impressive machine, 16 feet of reinforced titanium and composite materials shaped like a teardrop with bulging viewports. It looked less like a submersible and more like something designed for space travel. "First deep deployment, huh?" I turned to see a lean man with glasses approaching. He extended his hand. "Marcus Reeves, I'll be your driver today." His handshake was firm, professional. I recognized the calm confidence of someone who had spent thousands of hours mastering complex systems. "Sarah Chen," I said, "though I guess you knew that. Your reputation precedes you. 26 successful extreme condition rescues, plus you wrote the manual on high-pressure environment recoveries." He smiled slightly. "I read your paper on oxygen toxicity management under stress conditions. Impressive work." Before I could respond, a younger man jogged up to us, carrying a tablet and looking slightly out of breath. "Final systems check complete," he announced, then seemed to notice me. "Oh, you must be Chief Chen. Parker Collins, ma'am. Systems and Environmental Monitoring." He offered an enthusiastic handshake. Parker had a nervous energy that contrasted with Marcus's calculated calm. He couldn't have been more than 30, with sandy blonde hair that stuck up at odd angles and bright eyes that darted between us and the bubble. "Have either of you been briefed on what exactly we're retrieving?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Parker shook his head. "Just that it's some kind of stone artifact from a sunken fishing boat. Weird for all this secrecy over a rock, right?" Marcus adjusted his glasses. "Our job is to get down there, get it, and get back. The less we know, the fewer complications." I watched the technical crew making final preparations on the bubble. 7 miles down is no joke. The pressure at that depth would crush a normal submarine like an empty soda can. "The bubble can handle it," Marcus said with absolute certainty. Its hull design uses a revolutionary molecular structure that actually gets stronger under extreme pressure. We've simulated dives to 8 miles. Simulated, I emphasized. This is different. Parker laughed nervously. Well, that's why they sent the best, right? An hour later, we were suited up and boarding the bubble. The interior was cramped but efficiently designed. A pilot's chair surrounded by control panels, 2 passenger seats with access to secondary systems, and a small equipment bay in the rear. Every inch of space served multiple purposes. Marcus took his place at the controls, his movements practiced and precise. Parker settled into the system's monitoring station, immediately plugging his tablet into the console. I strapped myself into the remaining seat, checking my specialized dive gear one last time. The bubble would get us close, but I might still need to exit the vessel for the final recovery. "Comms check," Marcus said, his voice calm as the hatch sealed above us with a heavy thunk. "Systems online," Parker responded, his fingers dancing over his screens. "Environmental readings normal." "Recovery specialist ready," I confirmed. Marcus nodded and spoke into his headset. "Hawthorne Control, this is Bubble Actual. All stations report ready for deployment." "Copy that, Bubble Actual," came the response through our speakers. "You are cleared for launch. Good hunting." The bubble was lowered into the water with a gentle splash. As soon as we were clear of the ship, Marcus took control, and the engines hummed to life. The sound of the water changed as we began to sink beneath the waves. "Beginning descent," Marcus announced. "Estimated transit time to target, 3 hours, 42 minutes. The blue of the surface waters gradually darkened as we descended. At 500 feet, the last fragments of sunlight faded away, leaving us in the permanent midnight of the deep ocean, illuminated only by the bubble's external lights. Passing 1,000 feet, Parker called out, "All systems normal, hull integrity at 100%. I watched the depth gauge climb steadily higher, 2,000 feet, 3,000. The darkness outside the viewports seemed to press against the glass like a living thing. "You okay, Chief Chen?" Parker asked, glancing over. "You look worried." I forced a smile. "Just focused. And call me Sarah." In truth, something about this mission had me on edge. In my years of rescue diving, I'd learned to trust my instincts. Right now, they were screaming that we were missing critical information. "Have either of you worked on classified recoveries before?" I asked. Marcus kept his eyes on the controls. 3 times. Experimental drones that went down in deep water. Nothing like this depth, though. "Never," Parker admitted. "I'm usually stuck in the lab running simulations. This is my first field deployment with the bubble." Great. An untested vehicle, a rookie team member, and a mysterious object in the world's deepest trench. The perfect recipe for disaster. 5,000 feet, Marcus announced, initiating secondary pressure systems. The bubble creaked slightly as the pressure differential increased, but the hull held firm. Outside our windows, the occasional bioluminescent creature drifted past, living stars in an inverted sky. "What do you think it is?" Parker asked suddenly. "The artifact, I mean." "Could be anything," I replied. "Archaeological find, geological sample, military hardware." "The way those suits were acting, you'd think it was the Holy Grail," Parker said with a nervous laugh. Marcus shot him a look. Speculation doesn't help the mission. The descent continued in relative silence after that. I used the time to review the recovery protocols and check my equipment again. The display showed our depth continuing to increase, 10,000 feet, 15,000, 20,000. At 30,000 feet, the bubble gave a sudden lurch. Parker jumped, his tablet clattering to the floor. "What was that?" I asked, gripping my armrests. Marcus frowned, his hands moving quickly over the controls. Minor current anomaly, nothing to worry about. But I noticed the tightness around his eyes. That hadn't been in any of the simulations. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the darkness became. Even with the bubble's powerful lights, we could only see a few meters ahead. The water seemed thicker somehow, as if reluctant to let us pass. "Approaching target depth," Marcus said after what felt like an eternity. 35,700 feet. Parker whistled softly. "We're literally deeper than Mount Everest is tall." The sonar pinged, and Parker leaned forward. "I've got the Northern Star on scan. Bearing 035, range 200 meters. Marcus adjusted our course, taking us in. As we drew closer, the lights of the bubble revealed the hulking shadow of the sunken fishing vessel. It rested upright on the ocean floor, eerily intact for a ship that had sunk from the surface. No signs of damage were visible on its hull. "That's weird," Parker said, voicing my thoughts. "Shouldn't there be crush damage? At this depth?" "There," Marcus interrupted, pointing. "On the deck." Our lights illuminated a massive object secured to the main deck of the Northern Star. Even from this distance, I could make out its unnatural angles and strange surface markings. It looked like a chunk of stone, dark, almost black, roughly the size of a small car. The surface was covered with symbols unlike any writing system I recognized. "That's our artifact," I said quietly. A chill ran through me as we drew closer to the sunken ship and its mysterious cargo. Even through the layers of technology protecting us from the crushing depths, I felt a strange sensation, as if we were being watched, as if we were intruding somewhere we weren't meant to be. "Beginning final approach," Marcus said, his voice betraying no emotion as he guided the bubble toward the darkness waiting below. The Northern Star sat perfectly upright on the ocean floor, looking for all the world like it had been carefully placed there instead of sinking nearly 7 miles through crushing pressure. Our lights swept across its hull, revealing an impossibly intact vessel. No twisted metal, no imploded sections, not even a broken window. "That's not right," I said, leaning closer to the viewport. "A normal vessel would be completely crushed at this depth." Marcus guided the bubble in a slow circle around the fishing boat. "Maybe it's reinforced? Some kind of experimental design?" "It's a fishing trawler," I replied, unable to hide my disbelief. "Look at those rust patterns near the stern. That boat's at least 20 years old. No way it has the structural integrity to withstand this kind of pressure." Parker tapped rapidly on his tablet, eyes wide. "Structural analysis confirms what you're saying, Sarah. By all physical laws, that ship should be a pancake right now." We completed our circuit, bringing us back to face the artifacts secured to the main deck. The massive stone block drew my attention like a magnet. Its surface was midnight black, absorbing our lights rather than reflecting them, except where the strange angular markings caught the illumination. The symbols looked chiseled, deep grooves forming patterns that reminded me of no writing system I'd ever seen. "Can you get us closer to the artifact?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Marcus nodded and eased the bubble toward the Northern Star's starboard side. The stone block must have weighed several tons. How had a fishing vessel even transported something like that? "Beginning pre-retrieval systems check," Parker announced, but his voice sounded distant, distracted. He was staring at the artifact with an odd expression. "Parker?" I prompted. He blinked and turned back to his console. "Right, sorry." As Marcus positioned us alongside the vessel, I felt an unwelcome pressure building behind my eyes. Not physical pain, but something more like the feeling before a thunderstorm breaks. The air in the bubble seemed heavier somehow. "Ready to deploy the retrieval arms," Marcus said, his fingers dancing over the controls. "Sarah, I'll need you to guide the attachment process." I nodded and moved to the secondary station, bringing up the external camera feeds. The bubble's mechanical arms extended smoothly, hydraulics humming as they reached toward the artifact. "Hold position at 2 meters, I instructed, focusing on the camera display. "I want to get a better look before we touch this thing." Marcus complied, keeping us hovering steadily beside the deck. The close-up view of the artifact only made it more unsettling. The stone's surface had an oily quality despite being completely dry, and the symbols seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. "Anyone else feel weird?" Parker asked suddenly. "Define weird." I said without taking my eyes off the screen. Just pressure in my head. He rubbed his temples, and I keep thinking I hear something. That caught my attention. I turned to look at him. Hear what? Parker shook his head. It sounds crazy, but like singing? Really faint, like it's coming from very far away. Marcus frowned. That's impossible. Sound doesn't travel from the outside at this depth, not through the hull, and we're not receiving any audio transmissions. I know it's impossible, Parker said, a hint of irritation in his voice. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. I was about to respond when the lights inside the bubble flickered briefly. The main display winked out for a second before coming back online. What was that? I asked. Marcus was already checking the systems. Minor power fluctuation. Backup circuits engaged automatically. He sounded calm, but I noticed his posture had stiffened. We've got full redundant systems, right? I asked. Triple redundancy on all critical components, he confirmed. It's probably just the extreme pressure affecting some connections. Nothing to worry about. But there was plenty to worry about. We were trapped in an experimental vessel nearly 7 miles underwater, about to retrieve an artifact that shouldn't exist from a ship that should have been crushed to pieces. And now we were experiencing power issues while Parker was hearing impossible sounds. Let's just get this done, I said, turning back to the retrieval controls. The sooner we grab this thing, the sooner we head back to the surface. I guided the mechanical arms toward the artifact, using the joystick controls to make fine adjustments. The arms terminated in specialized grippers designed for delicate archaeological work, strong enough to lift heavy objects but precise enough not to damage them. As the first gripper moved within inches of the stone surface, every screen in the bubble went dark at once. What the? Marcus started. Just as suddenly, everything came back online. The systems restarted with a series of beeps and whirs. That was not a minor fluctuation, I said. Parker was frantically checking readings on his tablet. All systems show normal function. No power drain, no circuit damage. There's literally no explanation for what just happened. Marcus resumed the retrieval operation without commenting, but I could see tension in the set of his jaw. The grippers finally made contact with the artifact, closing gently around its edges. Contact confirmed, I said. Grip strength at 40%. As soon as the metal touched the stone, Parker gasped. He yanked off his headset and pressed his hands to his ears. Parker, what's wrong? I unbuckled my harness and moved toward him. The singing, he whispered. It got louder, much louder. His face had gone pale. You really can't hear it? I shook my head. There's nothing. It's beautiful, he said, his eyes unfocused. But wrong somehow, like it's being sung by something that doesn't have a human voice box. A chill ran up my spine despite the temperature-controlled environment of the bubble. Marcus, I think we should reconsider this retrieval, I said carefully. He didn't take his eyes off the controls. We have our orders, Chief Chen. The artifact needs to be recovered. Something's not right here, I insisted. The ship shouldn't be intact. Our equipment is malfunctioning, and now Parker's hearing things that can't possibly exist at this depth. Explainable phenomena, Marcus replied. The ship could be experimental, the equipment issues are minor, and Parker... He glanced over his shoulder at our systems specialist, who was still pressing his hands against his ears. Parker is probably experiencing auditory hallucinations from the pressure. I'm not hallucinating, Parker protested. It's real. It's coming from that thing. He pointed at the artifact on our screens. The lights flickered again, longer this time. When they stabilized, one of the external cameras showed strange distortion, the image warping and twisting before clearing. Retrieval is 20% complete, Marcus announced, continuing as if nothing unusual was happening, adjusting grip position for second anchor point. I watched uneasily as the mechanical arms shifted, maintaining their hold on the artifact while preparing to secure it more firmly. The navigation display suddenly showed nonsensical readings, claiming we were simultaneously at our current depth and 2,000 feet higher. "Marcus, the nav system's going haywire," I said. He glanced at it and frowned. "Secondary systems are still functioning correctly. We can proceed." Parker had gone quiet, staring fixedly at the artifact through the viewport. His lips were moving slightly, as if he were silently singing along to whatever impossible melody he was hearing. "Parker," I said sharply, putting my hand on his shoulder. "Stay with us, okay?" He blinked and looked at me, seeming to come back to himself. "Sorry, it's just so clear now, like someone turned up the volume." He swallowed. "Sarah, it knows we're here." Before I could respond, all the external lights on the bubble went out, plunging us into darkness except for the glow of our interior displays. The blackness outside the viewports was absolute, a darkness so complete it seemed solid. "External illumination failure," Marcus reported, his voice still maddeningly calm. "Switching to backup arrays." The backup lights flickered on, weaker than the main system, but enough to restore our view of the Northern Star and its disturbing cargo. "That's it," I said firmly. "We need to abort. Something is seriously wrong with either this site or our equipment, and I'm not risking our lives over a rock, no matter how strange it is." Marcus finally turned to face me fully. "Chief Chen, this mission was classified as priority retrieval. We don't have the authority to abort." "I'm the senior recovery specialist," I countered. "If I determine conditions are unsafe for retrieval, we back off. That's protocol." "The conditions are unusual, but not unsafe," he insisted. "The bubble is maintaining hull integrity. Life support is functioning perfectly. We're in no immediate danger." As if to mock his words, the sonar system suddenly emitted a piercing electronic shriek that made us all wince. The display showed concentric circles radiating outward from a point directly below us, as if something massive was rising from even deeper in the trench. But when the noise stopped and the sonar returned to normal operation, it showed nothing but empty water. "What was that?" I demanded. Marcus was checking the systems. "Sonar malfunction. Self-corrected." Parker looked terrified. The singing changed when that happened. It got excited. I made a decision. "Marcus, we need to back away from the artifact, just temporarily. Let's run a full systems diagnostic at a safe distance, then approach again if everything checks out." Marcus hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. A brief diagnostic might be prudent. He began to reverse our position, the mechanical arms still extended but withdrawing from the artifact. As the grippers released their hold on the stone, the bubble gave a violent lurch, as if caught in a sudden current. "What's happening?" I grabbed onto Parker's station to steady myself. "Unknown force acting on the hull," Marcus replied, his composure finally showing cracks as his hands flew over the controls. "It's like we're being pulled toward the artifact." The bubble's engines whined as they fought against whatever invisible force had grabbed us. Slowly, we began to move backward again, putting distance between ourselves and the Northern Star. As we retreated to 100 meters away, the sense of pressure in the cabin seemed to lessen. The equipment stabilized, and Parker slumped in his seat, looking exhausted. "It's quieter now," he murmured. "Still there, but muffled." I kept my eyes on the artifact as it grew smaller in our viewports. Even at this distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching us, studying us, with ancient, patient malevolence. "Full systems diagnostic," Marcus ordered, tapping commands into his console. "All subsystems." Parker pulled himself together enough to help, connecting his tablet to various terminals and checking readings. I watched them work while keeping one eye on our external cameras, half expecting to see something emerging from the darkness around us. "Diagnostic complete," Parker announced after several minutes. "And this makes no sense. Every system shows perfect function. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the bubble." "Then what caused the malfunctions?" I asked. No one had an answer. Marcus straightened in his seat. "We still have a mission to complete. The artifact needs to be retrieved. I stared at him. Are you serious? After everything that just happened? What exactly happened, Chief Chen? He challenged. We had some equipment glitches. That's not uncommon in experimental vessels, especially at extreme depths. And the singing? I asked, gesturing toward Parker. Marcus's expression hardened. As I said, likely a hallucination brought on by pressure and stress. I'm not hallucinating, Parker insisted again, but his voice lacked conviction now, as if he was starting to doubt himself. I looked between them, feeling caught in the middle. Marcus was right that we had a mission to complete. The officials had made it very clear how important this retrieval was, but everything about this situation felt wrong in a way I couldn't fully articulate. We approach again, Marcus decided, but with extra precautions, continuous system monitoring. At the first sign of serious malfunction, we withdraw and reassess. It was a reasonable compromise, but it did nothing to settle the dread pooling in my stomach. I nodded reluctantly and returned to my station. As the bubble glided forward once more toward the Northern Star and its cargo, the lights inside the cabin dimmed briefly. Not enough to qualify as a malfunction, just enough to notice. Enough to remind us that something wasn't right. Parker leaned toward me, his voice barely above a whisper. It's getting louder again. It's getting louder again, Parker whispered, his face gone pale in the blue glow of the instrument panels. I leaned closer. What exactly does it sound like? He closed his eyes, concentrating. It's like a choir, but wrong. The notes slide into each other. The words aren't. They can't be. Focus on your job, Marcus cut in, guiding the bubble forward with unwavering precision. We're approaching retrieval position. The Northern Star grew larger in our viewports as we closed the distance. That massive black stone still sat unnaturally on its deck, the strange symbols catching our lights. With each meter we advanced, Parker seemed to shrink further into himself, occasionally shaking his head like he was trying to dislodge something. Systems check, Marcus called out. Parker took a deep breath and turned to his station. All readings nominal. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at his screen. Wait, that's not right. What is it? I asked. The external temperature sensors are showing negative 50 degrees Celsius. He tapped at his controls. That's impossible. Water freezes at these pressures well before reaching that temperature. Marcus barely glanced over. Sensor malfunction. Switch to backup arrays. Parker nodded and flipped a series of switches. Backup sensors online, and they're reading normal temperature now, 4 degrees Celsius. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. First the power fluctuations, then the sonar, now the temperature sensors. The pattern of malfunctions was becoming impossible to ignore. 30 meters from target, Marcus announced, preparing retrieval arms. The mechanical limbs extended from the bubble's underbelly, their joints moving with hydraulic precision. On my monitor, I watched as they reached toward the artifact, ready to secure the heavy lifting cables. Without warning, every light on my control panel went dark. I've lost retrieval control, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline. Marcus's hands flew over his console, transferring retrieval functions to primary station. The lights on my panel flickered back to life, then immediately died again. Parker let out a small, strangled sound. It doesn't want us to take it, he said, the words tumbling out. Don't you get it? It's warning us. That's enough, Collins, Marcus snapped. Equipment failures happen, especially with prototype systems. I watched Parker's face carefully. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated despite the bright cabin lights. A thin sheen of sweat covered his forehead. Classic signs of acute stress response. Parker, take a few deep breaths, I said gently. Count them out. He nodded jerkily and began breathing deliberately, his shoulders rising and falling with each count. Navigation's acting up again, Marcus reported, his voice tight with frustration, showing multiple conflicting depths. I moved to his station and checked the readings. One display showed our true depth, around 36,000 feet, while another insisted we were at 20,000, and a third claimed we were continuing to descend past 40,000 feet. "This isn't normal equipment failure," I said quietly so Parker couldn't hear. "You know that, right?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "The mission parameters are clear, Chief Chen." "The mission parameters didn't account for whatever this is," I shot back. "We need to consider aborting. We're the first team to encounter this artifact. Its retrieval is a priority." His voice dropped lower. "I have direct orders to secure it regardless of complications." I stared at him. What exactly does that mean? Before he could answer, the cabin lights dimmed completely for 3 seconds, then surged back to full brightness. All three of us flinched at the sudden change. "Main power draw just spiked without cause," Parker reported, his voice steadier as he focused on the technical problem. "Backup systems engaged automatically, but main systems should have been fine. There's no reason for—" The bubble lurched sideways with enough force that I had to grab Marcus's chair to stay upright. "What the hell was that?" I demanded. "Unknown," Marcus replied, frantically working his controls. "Some kind of current or pressure wave." "There shouldn't be currents this strong at this depth," Parker said. The bubble stabilized, but my unease grew with each passing second. Nothing about this situation made sense. Not the intact ship, not the strange artifact, not our malfunctioning equipment, and certainly not the singing only Parker could hear. "We still have partial retrieval capability," Marcus said after running a quick diagnostic. "We can complete the mission." Parker spun in his chair to face him. "Are you serious? Something is wrong here. The singing keeps changing, like it's responding to what we do." His voice cracked. "It got angry when we tried to grab it before. Now it sounds, I don't know, excited? Hungry?" "There is no singing, Parker," Marcus said firmly. "It's in your head, pressure-induced auditory hallucination." "It's not." "Both of you, stop," I interjected. "This isn't helping." I turned to Marcus. "We need to admit something unusual is happening. That doesn't mean we abandon the mission, but we need to be smart about how we proceed." Marcus considered this, then gave a curt nod. "What do you suggest?" "We take it slow, one system at a time. If anything seems off, we back away immediately and reassess." Marcus didn't look happy, but he agreed. "Fine, but we are completing this retrieval." I turned to Parker. "Can you handle this? I need you focused." He ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, I can do this." "Good, let's—" Every screen in the cabin suddenly displayed the same thing, lines of code scrolling by too fast to read. Our navigation, life support, and retrieval systems all showed the same cascading symbols. "What's happening?" I asked, struggling to keep the alarm from my voice. Parker's fingers flew across his keyboard. "It looks like some kind of system-wide override, but that's not possible. These systems aren't even connected on the same network for security reasons." As suddenly as it began, the code vanished and our displays returned to normal. "System check," Marcus ordered. Parker ran a quick diagnostic. Everything's working perfectly. Again, just like before." He looked up at us with frightened eyes. "That can't happen. It's like the bubble fixed itself." Marcus repositioned us, bringing the bubble to hover directly over the artifact. The massive black stone looked even more menacing from above, its symbols forming patterns that seemed to swirl if I stared at them too long. "Deploying retrieval cables," Marcus announced. This time, the cables extended smoothly from their housing. I watched on the monitor as they lowered toward the artifact. "Left cable on target," Marcus reported. "Right cable approaching position." Parker suddenly clutched at his headset, wincing. "It's getting so loud," he whispered. "So many voices now." I placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling him trembling beneath my touch. "Just breathe, Parker. Focus on your breathing." Marcus continued guiding the cables, seemingly immune to the tension filling the cabin. Left cable secure. Right cable. The right cable froze mid-descent, the motors whining in protest. Jam in the housing, Marcus muttered, adjusting the controls. Nothing happened. I can't clear it remotely. The lighting in the cabin took on a reddish tint, though none of our warning systems had activated. I glanced at the environmental controls, but they showed normal operation. The color's wrong, Parker said, looking around frantically. You see that, right? The light's wrong. He was right. Though our indicator lights showed normal white illumination, the cabin was definitely bathed in a dim, rusty red glow that reminded me of dried blood. It's probably just... I started, but I couldn't finish the sentence. There was no rational explanation. The comm system crackled with static, then fell silent. The right retrieval cable suddenly dropped all the way to the deck of the Northern Star, landing several feet from the artifact. Cable released, but not under my command, Marcus said, a note of genuine concern finally entering his voice. Parker jumped up from his seat. We need to leave. Now. Right now. His voice had risen nearly to a shout. Sit down, Collins, Marcus ordered. You're not listening. Parker was breathing hard, almost hyperventilating. It's talking to me now. Actual words. I can't understand them, but they're words. I stepped between them, hands raised. Both of you need to calm down. Parker, please sit down. Marcus, we need to acknowledge that something very unusual is happening here. The red tint in the cabin deepened, though our systems still reported normal operation. The temperature dropped suddenly. I could see my breath clouding in front of me. Environmental control failure, Parker said, checking his readings. Temperature dropping rapidly, but the system says it's still normal. He looked up at us with wild eyes. The system is lying to us. Our external camera feeds began to distort, images breaking into pixels before reforming. On one monitor, I thought I saw something move in the darkness beyond our lights, something massive and shapeless. External camera glitch, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Parker sat down heavily, his hands shaking so badly he could barely operate his controls. We can't retrieve it. We shouldn't. Please. Marcus and I exchanged looks. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. We still have one cable secured, he said finally. If we can get the other one attached, we can complete the mission and get out of here. And if we can't? I asked. Then, he hesitated. Then we might need to consider alternatives. The temperature continued to drop. Ice crystals began forming on the edges of the viewports. Impossible at these pressures, yet happening right before our eyes. The right cable's stuck, Marcus said after attempting to reposition it. The housing mechanism won't respond. We'll need to manually reset it. Manually? I repeated. You mean? An external inspection, he confirmed. Someone needs to go outside and check the housing. The thought of leaving the relative safety of the bubble to enter the crushing darkness outside made my stomach turn. At this depth, even our specialized diving suits could only withstand the pressure for 20 minutes at most. I'll do it, Parker said suddenly. We both turned to look at him in surprise. What? I asked, sure I'd misheard. I'll go out. His voice was steadier now, though his face remained pale. I need to see it, hear it, up close. Absolutely not, I said immediately. You're in no condition for an external operation. I'm the systems specialist, Parker countered. I know the cable mechanisms better than either of you. He's right about that, Marcus admitted. This is insane, I said, looking between them. Parker, 5 minutes ago you were terrified of this thing. Now you want to go outside, closer to it. Parker's eyes met mine, and I was startled by their clarity. The singing changed again. It's calling me. I need to understand. That's exactly why you shouldn't go, I argued. Whatever's happening is affecting you more than us. It could be influencing your decisions. Or maybe I'm the only one who can really hear what's going on. Parker stood up, surprisingly steady. I can do this, Sarah. Let me do this. The red light in the cabin intensified. One of our external lights exploded in a shower of glass and sparks, visible on the camera feed. Half our illumination of the northern star vanished. External light failure, Marcus reported unnecessarily. Retrieval becomes significantly more difficult with reduced visibility. Which is why we should abort, I insisted. Or why we need that manual inspection even more, he countered. I felt caught between their competing arguments while the situation deteriorated around us. The bubble creaked as if under additional pressure, though our depth hadn't changed. Parker moved to the equipment bay and began preparing one of the specialized diving suits. His movements were deliberate, almost mechanical. "Parker, stop," I said, following him. "This is a bad idea." "It's the only way to complete the mission," he replied, not looking at me as he checked the suit's oxygen levels. "The cable won't reset remotely. Someone has to go out there." "Then I'll go," I offered. "I have more external operation experience." "But not with these systems," Marcus interjected from his station. "Parker's expertise makes him the logical choice." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously going to let him go out there, after everything that's happened?" "The mission comes first," Marcus said simply. Parker continued suiting up, checking seals and connections with practiced efficiency. The fear that had gripped him earlier seemed to have vanished completely, replaced by an eerie calm that worried me even more. "Parker, listen to me," I said, grabbing his arm. "Something out there is affecting your mind. You said yourself the singing changed. What if it's manipulating you?" He paused, meeting my eyes. "What if it's trying to communicate? What if this is first contact, Sarah?" A strange smile spread across his face. "Wouldn't that be something?" Before I could respond, the bubble shuddered violently. Several monitors went black simultaneously, while others displayed scrolling error messages. "Multiple system failures," Marcus reported, his fingers dancing across his controls. "Backup systems engaging." "We need to leave," I said with finality. "Now, artifact or no artifact." Parker continued preparing the dive suit. "We just need to secure that second cable, then we can go." I turned to Marcus. "Override him. You're the pilot. Tell him he can't go out there." Marcus looked torn for the first time since we'd begun the mission. "The suits are rated for this depth, for short durations. It's within safety parameters. Technically. Nothing about this situation is within parameters," I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "The ship shouldn't be intact. Our systems shouldn't be failing like this. And Parker shouldn't be hearing singing that doesn't exist." "But it does exist," Parker said quietly, sealing the suit's gloves. "You just can't hear it yet." The way he said "yet" sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. "Marcus, please," I tried again. "As recovery specialist, I'm formally recommending mission abort. This is too dangerous." Marcus checked his displays, which were still functioning despite the earlier failures. "Parker's right. We just need that second cable attached. A quick external operation, then we can leave with the artifact." Parker finished suiting up, leaving only the helmet unsecured. He looked calmer than I'd seen him since we began our descent. "It'll be okay, Sarah," he said. "I'll just go out, fix the cable, and come right back." "Don't do this," I pleaded one last time. He picked up the helmet, his expression almost peaceful. "I have to. It's waiting for me." The remaining external lights flickered, casting shifting shadows across the northern star and its ominous cargo. In those momentary flashes of darkness, the stone seemed to pulse with inner light, the symbols writhing like living things. Parker secured his helmet and moved toward the airlock, his breathing audible over our comms system, steady and rhythmic, not the panicked gasps from earlier. "Diver ready for external operation," he reported formally. I watched helplessly as Marcus initiated the airlock sequence. The inner door opened, and Parker stepped inside without hesitation. Before it closed behind him, he turned back to look at us through his helmet visor. "I can hear it so clearly now," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's beautiful. The airlock door sealed shut with a hiss of hydraulics, separating Parker from the safety of the bubble as he prepared to enter the crushing darkness outside. I pressed my hand against the cold metal, a sense of dread washing over me that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature inside the cabin. "Parker, can you hear me?" Marcus asked, activating the external communication system. Loud and clear, Parker's voice came through with surprising steadiness. Beginning depressurization sequence. I moved back to my station, but couldn't take my eyes off the small window in the airlock door. Through it, I could see Parker standing perfectly still as water slowly filled the chamber. His calm seemed so out of place. This was the same man who'd been on the verge of panic just minutes earlier. "His vitals are stable," Marcus reported, checking the biomonitoring display. "Oxygen flow normal, suit pressure maintaining integrity." The water rose past Parker's chest, then his shoulders, finally submerging his helmet. I expected some reaction, a flinch, a pause in his breathing, but he remained motionless, as if simply waiting. "External pressure equalized," he reported, opening outer door. The exterior hatch slid open, revealing the absolute blackness beyond. Our remaining external lights cut swaths through the darkness, illuminating swirling particles in the water and the hulking shadow of the northern star nearby. Parker stepped out of the airlock, the specialized dive suit's thrusters giving small bursts to stabilize him in the water. The tether connecting him to the bubble unspooled smoothly behind him, his lifeline in the crushing depths. "I'm outside," he announced unnecessarily, moving toward the retrieval mechanism. I watched on the monitors as Parker navigated around the bubble's hull, using the handholds embedded in the exterior. His movements were precise and efficient, none of the nervous energy that usually characterized him. "How are you feeling out there, Parker?" I asked, unable to keep the worry from my voice. "Good," he replied simply. "Better than inside, actually. The singing is clearer now, more directed." I exchanged glances with Marcus, whose face remained impassive, though his knuckles had whitened where he gripped the controls. "Just focus on the cable housing," Marcus instructed. "The quicker we get this done, the quicker we leave." Sure, Parker said, his voice distant, distracted. "I can see the problem now. The cable's tangled in the deployment mechanism. Should be an easy fix." The camera tracking Parker showed him reaching the underside of the bubble where the right retrieval cable emerged from its housing. He began working on the mechanism, his gloved hands moving with practiced ease despite the bulky dive suit. "Almost got it," he reported after a minute of silence. "Just need to—" He stopped suddenly, his head turning away from the cable housing toward the northern star. "Parker?" I prompted. "What is it?" "It's so much louder now," he murmured. "Can you really not hear it?" "There's nothing to hear, Parker," Marcus said firmly. "Focus on your task." Parker remained motionless for several seconds, his helmet aimed toward the massive black stone on the ship's deck. "Parker, the cable," I reminded him, fighting to keep my voice level. "Right, sorry." He turned back to the housing. It's calling me. By name now." A cold knot formed in my stomach. I glanced at the artifact on our external camera feed. In the dim light, the strange symbols carved into its surface seemed to catch the illumination differently than before, almost as if they were shifting positions when not directly watched. "Cable's almost clear," Parker reported, his voice suddenly professional again. "Just need to reset the spooling mechanism and—" He went rigid. The suit's thrusters fired erratically as his body jerked backward slightly. "Parker?" I called out, leaning closer to the monitor. "What's happening?" "Something—" His breathing quickened. "Something touched me. I felt—" The rest of his sentence dissolved into a strangled gasp. His body jolted violently, as if he'd been struck by an enormous force. "Parker!" I shouted. His scream tore through the comm system, raw and primal, a sound of pure terror that made my blood freeze. On the monitor, I watched in horror as Parker was yanked backward with impossible speed, away from the bubble. "Help me!" he cried, his voice breaking with panic. "Something's got my leg! It's pulling me!" Marcus was already activating the emergency retrieval system for the tether. "Hang on, Parker! We're bringing you back!" But the tether was extending, not retracting. Whatever had Parker was stronger than our retrieval motors. "I can't see it!" Parker screamed. "Oh God, I can't see what's got me!" I frantically switched between camera angles, trying to get a better view of what was happening. The external lights caught only glimpses of Parker's thrashing form as he was dragged further from the bubble, away from our lights, and into the perfect blackness beyond. The tether counter spun rapidly. 10 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters. "Full power to retrieval motors," Marcus ordered, his composure finally cracking. The bubble groaned as the engines strained against whatever force was pulling Parker away. On the stress monitors, I watched the tether approach its breaking point. "Sarah! Marcus!" Parker's voice had risen to a shriek. "It's big! It's so big! I can feel it around me!" The camera caught one final, terrible image. Parker, arms outstretched toward us, surrounded by a darker patch in the already black water. Not a creature with any recognizable form, but a void, deeper than the darkness around it. Then he was yanked downward with such force that his scream cut off mid-breath. The tether snapped with a violent recoil that shook the entire bubble. "No!" I slammed my hand against the console. "Parker!" The comms channel filled with static, then silence. On the biomonitoring display, Parker's vitals flatlined, then the signal disappeared entirely. "Parker, do you copy?" Marcus called, his voice tight. "Parker, respond!" Nothing but the soft hiss of an empty channel answered him. I stared at the external camera feed, searching the darkness for any sign of our colleague. The lights couldn't penetrate more than a few dozen meters into the crushing black water. Parker was gone. "We need to go after him," I said, the words tumbling out before I could think them through. Marcus shook his head, his face ashen. "We can't. Whatever took him." He swallowed hard. "We don't have any way to track him, and he's well beyond safe diving range now. We can't just leave him." My voice broke with the strain of keeping myself together. "He's gone, Sarah," Marcus said quietly. "The suit's rated for 20 minutes. Even if he survived whatever attacked him, he's got maybe 15 minutes of air left, and we have no way to find him in this darkness." The cold reality of his words hit me like a physical blow. Parker was gone, taken by something we couldn't see, couldn't understand, couldn't fight. A strange red glow caught my eye on the monitor. I turned my attention back to the northern star and felt my breath catch. The massive black stone on its deck was changing. The symbols etched into its surface now emitted a dull crimson light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "Marcus," I whispered, pointing to the screen. "Look." He stared at the monitor, his face blank with shock. "That's not possible." The stone continued to pulse, the rhythm increasing gradually. With each beat, the red glow intensified, illuminating the northern star's deck with bloody light. "We need to leave," I said, finding my voice again. "Now. Right now." Marcus didn't argue this time. His hands moved across the controls, initiating engine startup sequences, preparing for immediate ascent. A deep vibration ran through the bubble, different from the usual hum of the engines. It resonated at a frequency that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. "What is that?" I asked, gripping my station to steady myself. Marcus checked the instruments. "Nothing's showing up on the sensors, but I feel it too." The vibration grew stronger, resolving itself into a pattern that almost felt musical. A discordant, alien melody that seemed to bypass my ears and resonate directly in my bones. The singing, I realized aloud. I can hear it now. Marcus looked at me with widened eyes. "That's not possible. Sound doesn't travel. It's not traveling through the water," I interrupted, suddenly understanding. "It's coming from inside the bubble, or inside us." The pulsing stone grew brighter on our monitors, its red glow now illuminating the water around the northern star. The symbols writhed and shifted, no longer resembling any kind of written language, but something older, more primal, patterns that hurt to look at directly. I tore my eyes away from the screen and found Marcus staring fixedly at the monitor, his expression slack. His hands had stopped moving on the controls. "Marcus," I called, reaching over to shake his shoulder. "Marcus, we need to leave." He blinked slowly, as if waking from a deep sleep. "Yes, leaving. Right." His movements became mechanical as he resumed the ascent preparations. The vibration, the singing, grew louder, filling the cabin with its alien harmonies. I found myself wanting to listen, to decode its complex patterns, to understand the message it carried. With effort, I pulled my thoughts back to the immediate danger. "Engine sequence complete," Marcus announced, his voice oddly flat. "Beginning ascent." The bubble's thrusters engaged, pushing us upward and away from the northern star. As we rose, the pressure in my head increased. Not physical pressure, but a mental weight, as if something was pressing against my thoughts. "Faster," I urged, watching the depth gauge begin its painfully slow climb. "This is maximum safe ascent speed," Marcus replied. "Any faster risks hull integrity." On the monitor, I could still see the artifact, its red glow now bright enough to illuminate the entire ship and the water around it. The singing changed pitch, becoming more urgent, almost angry. "It doesn't want us to leave," I said, the realization filling me with dread. Marcus didn't respond. His eyes had taken on the same glazed quality I'd seen in Parker's just before he'd volunteered to go outside. "Marcus?" I tried again, louder this time. He turned to me slowly, his movements stiff. "We should go back." "What? No!" I grabbed his arm. "We need to get to the surface." "The artifact needs to be recovered," he said mechanically. "Mission parameters clear. Priority retrieval." Horror washed over me as I realized what was happening. The same influence that had affected Parker was now taking hold of Marcus. And if I lost him, I'd be alone down here, 7 miles below the surface with no way to pilot the bubble back to safety. "Marcus, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice firm despite my growing panic. "Parker is dead. Something killed him. We need to leave now, before it comes for us too." His eyes flickered, a moment of clarity breaking through. "Parker. Yes, Parker is gone." He shook his head slightly. "We need to ascend." The bubble continued to rise, but slower now, as if fighting against an unseen current. On the monitor, the red glow from the artifact grew dimmer as we increased our distance. The singing began to fade, though I could still feel its vibrations in my chest. 800 meters ascended, Marcus reported, sounding more like himself. 35,000 feet to go. The enormity of our situation crashed over me. We were impossibly far from safety, with a damaged vessel and a crew member whose mind was compromised. And somewhere below us, in the crushing darkness, Parker's body drifted in the hands of something ancient and malevolent. "What was it?" I asked quietly, more to myself than to Marcus. "What took him? What's down there with that stone?" Marcus kept his eyes fixed on his controls. "I don't know. I don't want to know." The singing faded to a whisper as we continued our ascent, though I knew it wasn't truly gone, just biding its time, waiting in the lightless depths. The artifact's glow disappeared from our monitors, swallowed by the darkness as we climbed. For the first time since our descent began, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of fear that had been building inside me. This wasn't a technical malfunction or an environmental hazard, things I'd been trained to handle. This was something else entirely, something that defied rational explanation. Parker was gone, taken by a force we couldn't comprehend. The stone on that impossibly intact ship was no archaeological curiosity. It was something alive, aware, hungry. and we had disturbed its rest. "We need to report this," I said as we passed the 35,000-foot mark. "Whatever that thing is, no one can be allowed near it again." Marcus nodded stiffly. "The mission record will show catastrophic equipment failure and the loss of Specialist Collins during standard external operations." I stared at him. "That's not what happened, and you know it." "It's what happened," he insisted, his voice hardening. "Anything else would be inadvisable to report." The implication hung between us like a physical presence. Someone had sent us down here, knowing what we might find. Someone wanted that artifact recovered, no matter the cost, and that someone would not want the truth in any official record. As the bubble continued its slow ascent toward the surface, leaving the Northern Star and its terrible cargo behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't really escaping. We were merely being allowed to leave, carrying a small piece of that ancient darkness with us, a darkness that would wait patiently for its next opportunity, its next victims. Parker's final scream echoed in my memory, a sound I knew would haunt my dreams for the rest of my life. But worse than his fear was the memory of his voice just before, filled with wonder as he described the singing only he could hear. "It's beautiful," he had said. Now I understood exactly what he meant, and why that made it all the more terrifying. The depth gauge had barely started its upward climb when Marcus's hands suddenly froze on the controls. The steady hum of the ascent thrusters faltered, then quieted completely. "Why are we stopping?" I asked, my voice tight. Marcus didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the navigation display where the Northern Star was still visible at the edge of our sonar range. When he finally turned to me, something in his eyes had changed. A flatness had replaced his usual alert focus. "I'm getting unusual pressure readings," he said, his tone oddly distant. "We should stabilize before continuing ascent." I leaned over to check his console. All pressure gauges showed normal readings for our current depth. "Everything looks normal to me, Marcus. We need to keep moving up." "No." The word came out sharp, decisive. "Something's not right. I need to check the lower systems." Before I could stop him, Marcus reversed our direction. The bubble dipped downward, the depth gauge now ticking in the wrong direction. "What are you doing?" I reached for the secondary controls at my station, but they remained unresponsive, locked out. "We can't leave yet." Marcus spoke as if explaining something obvious. "The mission isn't complete." Cold realization washed over me. The same influence that had affected Parker, first making him hear the singing, then compelling him to go outside, was now taking hold of Marcus. "The mission is over," I said firmly. "Parker is dead. We need to return to the surface immediately." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Parker isn't dead. He's with it now. He understands." "With what, Marcus? What is down there?" A smile spread across his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Something old, something waiting. I can hear it singing to me, Sarah, just like Parker did." The bubble continued descending, the navigation screen showing we were heading directly back toward the Northern Star. I had to regain control somehow, but the main pilot systems were locked to Marcus's station. "Listen to me," I tried again, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "Whatever you're hearing isn't real. It's affecting your mind. Fight it, Marcus." He turned to look at me fully, and I had to suppress a gasp. His pupils had expanded until almost no iris remained, just black pools reflecting the dim red emergency lights. "It's beautiful," he said, the same words Parker had used before his death. "You'll hear it clearly soon, too." I unbuckled from my station and moved toward him. "Let me take over. You need to rest." Marcus's arm shot out with surprising speed, grabbing my wrist. "Don't interfere." His grip was painfully tight. "We're going back. It wants us to return." I twisted free and stumbled backward. "We're not going back there. We have no choice." His voice had taken on a strange, multi-layered quality, as if something else spoke through him. It's called us, all of us. My mind raced through options. The bubble had emergency protocols, but most required the pilot's authorization. Physical override was possible, but would mean getting past Marcus to access the manual controls behind his station. The distant singing I'd begun to hear earlier grew louder as we descended, no longer just a vibration, but a discordant melody that seemed to twist through my thoughts. I fought to push it away, focusing on the immediate danger. "The artifact," I said, hoping to keep him talking while I inched toward the emergency toolkit. "What is it?" Marcus's eyes followed me, though his hands remained steady on the controls. "Not an artifact, a doorway, a beacon." His lips curved into a smile that didn't belong on his face. "A mouth." That last word sent a surge of fear through me. I remembered Parker's final moments, dragged away by something unseen in the darkness. "That thing killed Parker," I said, my back now against the supply cabinet. Marcus tilted his head, bird-like. "No, changed him, welcomed him, as it will welcome us." I managed to pop the latch on the toolkit while maintaining eye contact with him. Inside, I felt for the manual override key that would let me access the emergency systems. "And the Northern Star?" I asked, keeping him distracted. "How did a fishing boat end up 7 miles down with an ancient stone on its deck?" "Not ancient," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Eternal. It was here before. It will be here after." My fingers closed around the override key just as a flash of movement filled my vision. Not in the cabin, but somehow inside my mind. A massive shape writhing in the blackness. Countless limbs, or perhaps tendrils, extending from a central mass larger than the bubble itself, and faces, human faces, embedded within its shifting form, mouths open in silent screams. I gasped, dropping the key with a metallic clatter on the floor. The vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving me shaking. "You saw it," Marcus said, sounding pleased. "It's reaching for you, too." "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "A greeting, a glimpse." He turned back to the controls. "It wants to show us more." The depth gauge continued its steady descent. We were now less than 500 meters from the Northern Star. On the sonar, I could see the ship's outline growing larger as we approached. I needed to act now. Bending down as if steadying myself, I snatched the fallen key from the floor. "I'm going to check the oxygen levels," I said, moving toward the environmental control panel, strategically located near the emergency override. Marcus made no move to stop me, his attention fixed on the navigation screen where the Northern Star now dominated the display. The massive black stone on its deck was visible again, its surface once more pulsing with that sickly red glow. The singing intensified, no longer distant, but filling the cabin, filling my head. It wasn't beautiful to me as it apparently was to Marcus. It was wrong, dissonant notes that never resolved, voices that weren't voices at all. Another vision flashed before me. Parker, his dive suit crushed like paper, his body contorted as countless dark appendages wrapped around him, pulling him apart. His face, still visible inside his cracked helmet, mouth open in a scream I could almost hear. Then darkness flowing into the helmet, down his throat, behind his eyes. I clutched the console, fighting the urge to vomit. These visions weren't memories. I hadn't seen Parker's death. They were being planted in my mind, either by the artifact or by whatever controlled it. "It's showing you the truth," Marcus said without turning around. "What waits for all of us?" Using the console to shield my movements from Marcus, I slid the override key into its slot. 1/4 turn, and I'd have access to the emergency thruster controls. "Why would it want us?" I asked, keeping him talking while I carefully turned the key. "We're nothing to it. Motes. Specks." Marcus's voice remained eerily calm. "But we can serve. We can join. We can feed." The key clicked into position. The emergency panel lit up with a soft green glow, displaying the backup controls. All I needed was 10 seconds at that panel to initiate an emergency ascent that would override Marcus's commands. "Feed what?" I asked, taking a small step toward the panel. "The hunger," Marcus replied simply. "It sleeps for ages, then wakes, calls to the surface, feeds, returns to sleep." We were now less than 200 meters from the northern star. The red glow from the artifact bathed our cabin in crimson light that came through our external cameras. The singing had become so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. "And the government?" I pressed, inching closer to the panel. "Did they know what they were sending us to?" Marcus laughed, a hollow, empty sound. "Some knew, some always know, some always serve." He tilted his head again. "But you ask too many questions, Sarah." Before I could reach the emergency controls, Marcus moved with unnatural speed. He was out of his seat and standing between me and the panel before I could react. "I can't let you interfere," he said, his voice no longer sounding entirely human. "We've been called. We must answer." "Marcus, this isn't you," I pleaded. "Fight it. Whatever's in your head. It's not real." "It's more real than anything I've ever known." His eyes were completely black now, reflecting nothing. "Let it in, Sarah. Stop fighting." The singing crescendoed, threatening to drown out all other sound. My vision blurred as another image forced itself into my mind, the massive shape I'd glimpsed earlier, but clearer now. A mountain of flesh that was not flesh, darkness given form, ancient beyond comprehension. At its center, a gaping maw lined with row upon row of teeth, opening to reveal. I snapped back to reality with a gasp. Marcus stood inches from me, his face slack, eyes vacant. Behind him, through the viewport, I could see the northern star clearly now, the artifact on its deck pulsing like a monstrous heart. 100 meters, Marcus said mechanically, preparing for docking procedure. Docking? We had no plan to dock with the northern star, but as Marcus returned to his station, I saw on the screen that he was positioning the bubble to attach directly to the fishing vessel's hull. I had to act now. With Marcus at the controls, I lunged for the emergency panel. My fingers found the ascent override switch and flipped it upward. Nothing happened. I tried again, toggling the switch frantically. The panel remained lit, but the commands weren't executing. "It won't work," Marcus said without looking at me. "It's in the systems now, in the bubble, in us." "That's impossible," I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew it was true. The same force that had affected our equipment earlier, causing unexplainable malfunctions, had now taken full control of the bubble's systems. 50 meters to docking position, Marcus announced. I abandoned the useless emergency controls and rushed to Marcus, grabbing his shoulders. "Marcus, wake up! This thing is going to kill us!" He looked through me, not at me. "Not kill. Transform. Elevate. It's a gift, Sarah." Parker's death wasn't a gift. Parker isn't dead. Marcus smiled that terrible, empty smile again. He's part of it now. He's waiting for us. Another vision struck me. Parker's face, no longer contorted in pain, but serene, his eyes as black as Marcus's had become. Around him, other faces I didn't recognize, all wearing the same peaceful expression, all with the same bottomless black eyes, all subsumed into the greater mass of the ancient entity. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the viewport. Outside, the northern star loomed large, no longer looking like a simple fishing vessel, but something else. Its shape suggesting bones, teeth, a spine. 20 meters, Marcus intoned. Prepare for contact. I had one last desperate option. The bubble's control systems might be compromised, but there was still the manual emergency release for the ballast tanks. If I could reach that and activate it, the sudden buoyancy change would force us upward, away from this nightmare. The panel was located on the floor near the airlock, the same airlock Parker had used on his one-way journey outside. I dropped to my knees and pried open the access panel, revealing the large red lever underneath. 10 meters, Marcus called out. Final approach. As my hand closed around the lever, A terrible pressure built inside my head. The singing became a scream, inhuman and ancient, filled with hunger and malice. My vision swam with images of darkness, of countless deaths across countless years, of something patient and eternal waiting in the deepest part of the world's oceans. "Too late," Marcus said, his voice now completely devoid of humanity. "We've arrived." A heavy shudder ran through the bubble as we made contact with the northern star. The cabin lights died completely, leaving only the red glow from the artifact streaming through our viewports and cameras. I pulled on the emergency lever with all my strength, but it refused to move, frozen in place like everything else in our vessel. Marcus sat motionless at his station, his silhouette black against the crimson light, no longer speaking or moving. The singing changed, becoming something triumphant, victorious. Through the viewports, I watched as the artifact's pulsing accelerated, the symbols on its surface now writhing and flowing like living things. I was completely alone. Marcus was gone, lost to whatever force now controlled him. Parker was dead or worse. The bubble, our only protection in this crushing deep, was no longer under our control, and 7 miles of ocean separated me from any hope of rescue or escape. The red glow pulsed through the bubble, painting everything in blood-like tints. I pressed my back against the viewport, watching Marcus's motionless silhouette at his station. The singing had changed again, no longer just sound, but a presence that seemed to fill every molecule of air around me. "The connection is complete," Marcus said, his voice carrying that unnatural, multi-layered quality. "The door will open. It will rise." I tried again to pull the emergency lever, putting all my weight behind it. The metal bar didn't move a millimeter. Like everything else in the bubble, it was now under control of whatever consciousness lived within that terrible stone. The vessel shuddered violently, making me lose my grip on the lever. I fell sideways, striking my shoulder against the airlock door, the same door Parker had walked through to his death. Pain shot down my arm, but I welcomed it. Pain was human. Pain was mine. "System reconfiguration at 70%, Marcus announced to no one, his fingers moving across controls that no longer responded to human commands. "Preparing external hatches for full interface." External hatches? The only external hatch was the airlock. With horror, I realized the entity intended to open our only protection against the crushing pressure outside. "Marcus, please," I begged, scrambling to my feet. "You have to fight this." He didn't acknowledge me. On the monitors, I could see the artifact's symbols flowing faster, arranging themselves into new configurations. Each new pattern sent fresh waves of alien thought crashing against my mind. Images of darkness, of hunger, of something vast and patient that had waited eons for this moment. 90% reconfiguration, Marcus continued. External pressure equalization beginning. A sharp hiss came from the airlock, the sound of pressure seals disengaging. The door I'd just been leaning against grew cold to the touch, then ice cold. Water was about to breach our hull. Panic gave way to clarity. If I couldn't control the bubble's systems, couldn't move us away from the northern star, couldn't reach Marcus through whatever held his mind, I needed to attack the problem at its source, the artifact. The connection between it and the bubble was what allowed it to control our systems, and that connection ran through. My eyes found the retrieval system console, the station where both Marcus and I had tried to manipulate the cables to secure the artifact. The thick bundle of cables connecting that system to our main computers was visible where it ran along the ceiling, glowing with the same red light that pulsed through everything else. I looked around desperately for something heavy enough to do damage. The emergency toolkit still lay open where I'd dropped it. Inside was a heavy wrench meant for manual override of the airlock mechanisms. The airlock gave another groan as more seals disengaged. We had seconds, not minutes. I lunged for the toolkit, grabbed the wrench, and turned toward the retrieval console. Marcus's head snapped toward me, his completely black eyes widening. "No," he said, but it wasn't Marcus speaking. The voice was deeper, older, filled with a terrible authority. "You will not interfere." He began to rise from his chair, moving with jerky, puppet-like motions. I didn't wait to see what he would do. With 3 steps, I reached the retrieval console and brought the wrench down with all my strength. The reinforced glass display cracked but didn't break. I swung again, putting my shoulder into it. This time the screen shattered, sending fragments flying. Sparks erupted from the damaged electronics beneath. "Stop!" The voice from Marcus's mouth was no longer trying to sound human. It reverberated through the cabin, making my ears ring. The singing rose to a shriek of rage. I ignored it, smashing the wrench into the console's inner components again and again. Each blow sent more sparks flying, each impact reverberating up my arms. Marcus grabbed me from behind, his grip inhumanly strong. I drove my elbow back, catching him in the stomach. He made no sound of pain, but his grip loosened enough for me to twist free. I turned, ready to defend myself, but froze at what I saw. Black fluid leaked from Marcus's eyes and nose, running down his face like oil. His mouth hung open in a silent scream, more of the fluid dripping from his lips. "You cannot stop this," the voice said through him, each word clearly causing him pain. I turned back to the console, raising the wrench high. "Watch me." With a final blow, I struck the main cable junction where it connected to the console. A blinding flash of blue-white light erupted, and the cable severed with a sound like a scream. Every screen in the bubble went dark at once, and Marcus collapsed to the floor. For a heartbeat, silence, complete darkness. Then a terrible grinding noise shook the entire vessel. Emergency lights flickered on, casting weak yellow illumination around the cabin. Through the viewport, I saw the artifact on the Northern Star's deck. The symbols on its surface no longer flowed. They burned, incandescent with rage. The entire stone vibrated, sending shockwaves through the water that hit the bubble like physical blows. The grinding noise came again, and I realized what was happening. The docking mechanism connecting us to the Northern Star was disengaging. Without the retrieval system maintaining the connection, we were breaking free. I scrambled to the main console, praying the bubble's core systems would respond again. The displays lit up one by one, sluggishly at first, then more quickly as whatever hold the artifact had on our technology weakened. "Navigation online," the bubble's system announced in its flat, computerized voice. "Life support functional. Warning, multiple system failures detected. Emergency ascent recommended." I didn't need to be told twice. My hands flew across the controls, activating the emergency ascent protocol. The engines coughed once, twice, then roared to life. The bubble lurched upward, away from the Northern Star. Through the rear cameras, I watched as the distance between us and the fishing vessel grew. The artifact's glow dimmed, not because it was weakening, but because we were moving beyond its reach. A low moan from the floor reminded me of Marcus. I knelt beside him, unsure of what I'd find. The black fluid had stopped flowing from his face, though streaks of it still marked his skin. His eyes fluttered open, normal eyes again, the whites visible around his blue irises. "Sarah?" His voice was weak but his own. "What happened?" "Don't try to talk yet," I said, helping him to a sitting position. "We're ascending. We're getting out of here." His gaze found the destroyed retrieval console, then moved to the wrench still clutched in my hand. Understanding dawned on his face. "It was in my head," he whispered. "It was controlling me, making me see things, do things." He shuddered violently. "Parker. Oh God, Parker. I know." There was nothing else to say. A sudden violent impact rocked the bubble, nearly sending us both sprawling. I grabbed the edge of the console to steady myself. "What was that?" Marcus asked, his voice stronger now, professional training asserting itself through his horror. I checked the external cameras. The water behind us churned with movement. Something massive was displacing the current, something following us. "It's coming," I said, my mouth dry with fear. "Whatever took Parker." Marcus pulled himself up, leaning heavily on the console. How fast can we ascend? Not fast enough if that thing catches us. I pointed to the depth gauge. We're still over 30,000 feet down. Another impact struck the bubble, harder than the first. Warning lights flashed across the console. Hull integrity at 87%, the system announced. Warning, unidentified pressure anomaly detected. Marcus wiped the black residue from his face with his sleeve. What about the artifact? Is it still connected to the bubble's systems? I don't think so. I destroyed the interface. He nodded. Then we have one advantage. It can't control us anymore. He began rapidly typing commands into the console. I'm redirecting power from life support and non-critical systems to the engines. Is that safe? Safer than staying near that thing. He looked up at the monitor showing the churning water behind us. We have enough oxygen for the ascent even at reduced life support, but not if that thing tears open our hull. The engine's pitch rose as more power flowed to them. Our ascent speed increased, the depth gauge numbers changing more rapidly now. 29,000 feet, I read aloud. We're making progress. Marcus pulled up the damage report on his screen. The retrieval system is completely destroyed. Navigation is functional, but compromised. Life support stable at reduced capacity. He paused, studying the readings. Sarah, what exactly happened while I was gone? I told him what I could, how he docked us with the Northern Star, how the artifact had taken control of the bubble systems, how I destroyed the retrieval console to break the connection. I don't remember any of that, he said quietly. The last clear memory I have is deciding to turn back toward the artifact. After that, he shook his head. Just fragments, voices, visions. Another impact, less forceful this time. The monitors showed the disturbance in our wake diminishing. Whatever pursued us was falling behind. I think we're outrunning it, I said, allowing myself the first glimmer of hope. For now, Marcus checked our ascent rate. But we still have a long way to go. We watched the depth gauge in tense silence as the numbers continued to decrease. 25,000 feet, 20,000. The bubble groaned under the strain of our accelerated ascent, but held together. Do you think it was alien? Marcus asked suddenly. The artifact, I mean. I considered the question. Not alien, at least not in the way we think of aliens. It felt older, like it was here long before us, before everything. And the Northern Star? How did a fishing boat end up 7 miles down with that thing aboard? I'm not sure we'll ever know that answer, I said. But I think the boat was bait, or a lure. Marcus nodded slowly. For us, or people like us. How much did they know? I wondered aloud. The officials who sent us down here, did they know what we'd find? Some of them knew something, Marcus said grimly. The mission was too specific, too urgent for them not to have had some idea. The water outside our viewports had lightened slightly, still deep ocean blue, but no longer the perfect blackness of the trench. We'd passed 15,000 feet. We'll have to report this, I said. Make sure no one else gets sent down there. Marcus laughed bitterly. You think they'll listen? That thing has been down there for who knows how long, centuries, millennia maybe, and now they know exactly where it is. Another silence fell between us, broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional creak of the hull. The bubble continued its ascent, no longer pursued by whatever horror had taken Parker. I allowed myself to breathe more easily as the depth gauge passed 10,000 feet. I keep seeing Parker, Marcus said softly. When I close my eyes, I see him screaming, being pulled apart. Those aren't your memories, I told him, though I'd seen the same visions. It put those images in our heads. Does that make them less real? He looked at me, his eyes haunted. He died terrified, alone in the dark, because we brought him down here. I had no answer for that. The guilt would be something we both carried forever. As the depth gauge passed 5,000 feet, a thought struck me with terrible clarity. "They'll send someone else," I said. "Once we report what happened, they'll send another team, better equipped, better prepared. But still, they won't listen," Marcus finished. "They'll think it was just equipment failure or human error. They'll try again. And the same thing will happen." The water outside had lightened to a more recognizable ocean blue. We were approaching depths where sunlight could penetrate. Normal depths, human depths. "We can warn them," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Would you have believed it?" I asked. "Before experiencing it yourself, would you have believed a report about singing stones and mind control and ancient entities in the deep?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The bubble broke the surface with a gentle bounce, sunlight streaming through the viewports. After the hours of darkness, the light felt almost painful on my eyes. I squinted through it to see the USS Hawthorne waiting nearby, just as we'd left it. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity what we'd encountered. Not an artifact, not a relic, not even an entity in the way we understood such things. We'd brushed against something from the deep past of our world, something that had waited in darkness while mammals evolved, while humans built civilizations, while we developed technology that allowed us to reach its domain, and we'd barely escaped with our lives. Our radio crackled to life. "Bubble, this is Hawthorne Control. We've been trying to reach you for hours. Status report." Marcus looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. "What do we tell them? How much?" I took a deep breath. "Hawthorne Control, this is Chen. We've experienced catastrophic equipment failure and..." My voice caught. "And we've lost Specialist Collins." There was a pause. "Say again, Bubble? You've lost Collins?" "Confirmed," I replied, my voice steadier now. "External operation casualty. Complete mission failure. Request immediate extraction and medical attention for remaining crew." As Hawthorne acknowledged and began recovery procedures, Marcus and I sat in silence, both understanding the terrible truth. Our technology, our training, our human confidence had meant nothing in the face of what waited in the darkness below. Some things are meant to stay buried in the deepest places of the world, ancient evils that our modern minds cannot comprehend and our modern tools cannot control. And we had left it there, waiting in the abyss, waiting for the next human intrusion, waiting with infinite patience for another chance to rise. The recovery operation happened with military precision. The moment the bubble broke the surface, I could see figures in dark uniforms lining the deck of the USS Hawthorne, their movements displaying none of the casual efficiency of standard naval personnel. These people moved with purpose, focused, disciplined, and clearly waiting specifically for us. "Something's not right," Marcus murmured, his voice barely audible over the comms. His face was still streaked with dried residue from the black fluid. I nodded slightly, watching as the recovery crane swung into position. The radio crackled again. "Bubble, maintain position for recovery. Do not attempt to open any hatches until you're secured on deck. Acknowledge." "Acknowledged, Hawthorne Control," I replied automatically, years of training taking over despite my exhaustion. The recovery hooks connected with a metallic clang that reverberated through the bubble's hull. We began rising from the water, swaying gently as the crane lifted us toward the ship. Through the viewports, I could see more personnel gathering, some in naval uniforms, but many others in dark suits despite the ocean environment. "That's not standard recovery protocol," Marcus said, his professional composure returning despite what we'd been through. "Those aren't regular Navy." "Government," I replied, remembering the 3 men who had briefed me initially. "Same ones who sent us down there." The bubble settled onto the deck with a heavy thud. Immediately, figures swarmed around us, attaching stabilizing clamps and positioning a docking collar around our hatch. I caught glimpses of equipment being readied: cameras, containment cases, what looked like sensor arrays. "They're treating this like a quarantine situation," I observed. Marcus laughed bitterly. "Smart of them. after what that thing did to our systems." He trailed off, then looked at me directly. "Sarah, they can't know about what really happened down there, about what that thing can do." Before I could respond, the external comms crackled again. "Preparing to open outer hatch. Stand by for decontamination procedures." "Decontamination?" I repeated, exchanging a look with Marcus. That wasn't in any recovery protocol I was briefed on. A hissing sound filled the cabin as a fine mist sprayed from nozzles around the docking collar. The viewport fogged briefly, then cleared. I could see figures in what looked like hazmat suits approaching the hatch. "Chen, Reeves." A voice came through the speaker, different from the previous one, harder, more authoritative. "You will exit the vessel one at a time when instructed. You will surrender all personal equipment and follow escort personnel without deviation. Non-compliance will result in immediate containment measures. Is that understood?" Marcus tensed beside me. "What the hell?" "Is that understood?" the voice repeated, sharper this time. "Understood," I responded, placing a warning hand on Marcus's arm. The hatch unlocked with a mechanical clunk. It swung open slowly, revealing two figures in sealed protective gear waiting outside. "Specialist Chen, exit first." I gave Marcus one last look. His eyes were clear now, his expression grim but focused. "See you on the other side," he said quietly. I nodded, then moved to the hatch and climbed out onto the deck of the Hawthorne. The moment my feet touched the metal surface, two handlers in sealed suits gripped my upper arms firmly. "This way," one said, voice muffled through the suit. They guided me not toward the main superstructure of the ship, but to a temporary structure that had been erected on the deck, a series of connected modules resembling a field hospital or emergency command center. Behind me, I heard Marcus being similarly escorted, but in a different direction entirely. "Where are you taking him?" I asked, trying to look back. "Keep moving," was the only response. Inside the temporary structure, white plastic sheeting created a series of sealed chambers. I was led through the first, where silent technicians in protective gear took photographs of me from multiple angles. In the second chamber, different technicians collected samples, swabs from my skin, hair, clothing. No one spoke to me directly. They communicated with each other in terse, professional fragments. Subject 1, exterior scan complete. Collecting sample set alpha. Baseline readings established. The third chamber contained a shower station. My escorts finally released my arms. "Remove all clothing. Place in the red container. Shower thoroughly with the provided solution. Put on the clean garments provided." I hesitated, looking around at the faceless figures watching me. "I'd like some privacy." "That's not possible at this stage," came the flat reply. "Containment protocols require continuous monitoring." I realized arguing would be pointless. Whatever these people thought we might have brought back with us from the deep, they were taking no chances. I undressed mechanically, placing my clothes in the indicated container, which was immediately sealed and removed from the chamber. The shower solution stung my skin, some kind of disinfectant, but I welcomed the physical sensation. It helped ground me in reality after the nightmare of the deep. The clean garments turned out to be a hospital-style gown and paper slippers. No underwear, no socks. Nothing that was actually mine. Even the small silver diving medallion I always wore around my neck, a gift from my first diving instructor, had been taken with my clothes. Two new escorts waited at the exit of the shower chamber. These wore lighter protective gear, masks and gloves rather than full suits. They led me through more plastic-sheeted corridors to what looked like a medical examination room. A doctor, at least someone in a white coat, examined me thoroughly, taking blood samples, checking my vital signs, shining lights in my eyes and ears. Again, they barely spoke to me directly, instead dictating notes to a recorder. Subject shows elevated cortisol levels consistent with extreme stress. Pupil reaction normal. No visible signs of unusual dermal contact or contamination. After the examination came another corridor, another room, this one recognizable as an interrogation space. A single metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, one on either side, a recording device placed conspicuously in the center, 2 cameras visible in opposing corners. The walls were bare metal, likely the actual structure of whatever module this was. "Wait here," one escort said, the first direct communication in what felt like hours. They both exited, leaving me alone. I sat in the chair facing the door, my bare legs cold against the metal seat. I had no watch, no way to tell how much time had passed since we'd surfaced. The lighting was harsh and unwavering, providing no clue about whether it was day or night. The door opened. A man entered, thin, with close-cropped gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a dark suit, pristine despite the ship environment. I recognized him immediately, the older official from my initial briefing, the one who had presented the mission folder. He carried a thick file which he placed on the table before sitting across from me. "Specialist Chen," he said, his voice just as cold and measured as I remembered. "I'm glad to see you've returned safely." "Not all of us did," I replied. His expression didn't change. "Yes, the loss of Specialist Collins is most unfortunate." He opened the file, appearing to study its contents, though I suspected he knew every word by heart. "I understand you reported an equipment failure and the loss of Specialist Collins during an external operation. Is that correct?" I met his gaze steadily. "That's what I reported over the radio." "And is that what happened?" The question hung in the air between us. I thought of Parker being dragged screaming into darkness, of Marcus with black fluid leaking from his eyes, his mouth moved by something ancient and malevolent, of the singing that wasn't singing, the visions, the artifact pulsing like a heart. "Define equipment failure," I said finally. His mouth tightened slightly, the first real expression I'd seen from him. "This isn't a philosophical discussion, Specialist Chen. I need your account of what happened during the mission, in detail." "Where's Marcus?" I asked instead of answering. "I want to speak with him." "Pilot Reeves is being debriefed separately." "Why?" He closed the file. "Standard procedure for mission failure analysis. Independent accounts prevent confirmation bias and ensure objective data collection." I almost laughed. There was nothing standard about that mission. Nothing. "That's what we're here to determine." He leaned forward slightly. "Now, please describe the sequence of events following your identification of the target vessel." I took a deep breath, deciding how much to reveal. The truth seemed impossible, even to me who had lived through it. And if I told this man about the artifact's true nature, about its ability to control technology, to influence minds, would I be helping prevent future disasters, or simply providing information they would use to mount another attempt? "We located the Northern Star at the coordinates provided," I began carefully. "The vessel was intact, which was unexpected at that depth. The artifact was secured to its deck, as described in our briefing." "And the artifact appeared as expected?" I paused. "It was a large stone object with unusual markings, yes." He nodded, making a note. "Continue." I described the retrieval attempt in measured terms, the mechanical difficulties, the system's malfunctions, Parker's external mission to fix the cable housing. I recounted his death as unknown external forces causing catastrophic suit failure, rather than mentioning the invisible entity that had dragged him away. Throughout my account, the man made occasional notes but showed no surprise, no shock at the loss of life. When I finished describing our emergency ascent, omitting the destruction of the retrieval console and Marcus's possession, he nodded again and closed his notebook. "And during this sequence of events, did you observe any unusual phenomena? Anything that couldn't be explained by equipment malfunction or human error?" The question was too pointed, too specific. He knew something or suspected something beyond what I'd told him. "Define unusual phenomena," I countered. His expression hardened. "Specialist Chen, I remind you that this mission was classified at the highest levels. Your cooperation is not optional." "I'm cooperating," I said. "I'm just trying to understand what you're asking me." He studied me for a long moment. Did you or any crew member report hearing sounds that couldn't be accounted for by the vessel's normal operations? My blood went cold. He knew about the singing. The pressure at that depth can cause auditory hallucinations, I said carefully. There were several instances of crew members reporting sounds that weren't verified by others. Such as? Parker thought he heard singing. It was likely the result of pressure-induced stress. The man nodded again, making another note. And did you observe any unusual behavior from the artifact itself? Any changes in appearance or position? The lighting at that depth made accurate visual assessment difficult, I replied, hedging again. Shadow movements could create the illusion of changes. He closed his notebook deliberately. Specialist Chen, let me be direct. We have full telemetry data from the Bubble's systems up until the point where numerous failures began. We have audio recordings of all communications, including Specialist Collins' reports of singing and his statements that it knows we're here. We have sensor readings indicating energy signatures that cannot be explained by any known geological or physical process. He leaned forward. What we don't have is a first-hand account from you, a trained observer with relevant experience, about what actually happened down there. So I will ask again, did you observe phenomena that could not be explained by equipment malfunction or human error? I met his gaze steadily. Yes. Please describe these phenomena in detail. I weighed my options carefully. They already knew about the singing, about the artifact's influence on our systems. Denying those things would only undermine my credibility, but I didn't have to give them everything. The artifact appeared to generate some kind of energy field that interfered with our electronics, I said. It affected our communications, navigation, and retrieval systems. It may have contributed to Parker's equipment failure during his external operation. And the reports of singing? Parker described hearing voices or sounds from the artifact. These auditory phenomena increased when we were in closer proximity to the object. The man nodded. Did you hear these sounds yourself? Another careful choice. I perceived vibrations that could be interpreted as sound, yes, toward the end of the mission. And Pilot Reeves? You'd have to ask him, I said, though I knew Marcus had heard it too, had been completely controlled by it. The man made a final note, then closed his notebook. Thank you for your cooperation, Specialist Chen. There will be additional debriefings, but this concludes our initial session. He stood, gathering his materials. I remained seated, looking up at him. What was it? I asked. That artifact. What do you know about it? He regarded me impassively. That information remains compartmentalized. A man died, I said, my voice rising slightly. Parker Collins died trying to retrieve that thing. We deserve to know what it was. The official report will list Specialist Collins as lost during a deep-sea equipment testing operation, he replied flatly. His family will receive full benefits and honors consistent with a duty-related accident. An accident? I stood now too, anger overriding caution. It wasn't an accident. Something down there took him. Something that controlled our systems, that got inside our heads. Specialist Chen. His voice cut through mine like a blade. I strongly advise you to confine your statements to observable facts and established scientific principles. Speculative interpretations of events experienced under extreme pressure and stress conditions will not be included in any official record. The warning was clear. Stick to the script or face consequences. There will be a short recess, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken, after which you'll meet with the mission medical officer for psychological assessment. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Specialist Chen, all aspects of this mission remain classified under national security protocols. Discussion of any mission details with unauthorized personnel constitutes a serious federal offense. I'm sure I don't need to elaborate on the consequences. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the cameras still recording from the corners of the room. Hours passed in a blur of similar interrogations. Different questioners, different approaches, but always the same underlying message. Tell us about the technology, the observable phenomena, but keep the impossible parts to yourself. Whenever I ventured into territory they deemed too speculative, the artifact's apparent consciousness, its control over Marcus, the visions it planted in our minds, the questions would circle back to equipment malfunctions and pressure-induced stress responses. The psychological evaluation was particularly pointed. The doctor, a woman with a severe hairstyle and practiced sympathetic expression, focused extensively on my mental state during the mission. It's common for individuals under extreme pressure to experience auditory or visual phenomena that aren't actually present, she explained, as if to a child. The human brain seeks patterns, explanations. In deep-sea environments with limited sensory input, the mind often creates these patterns where none exist. Is that what happened to Parker? I asked. His mind created the thing that dragged him away screaming. Her smile tightened. Specialist Collins experienced a catastrophic equipment failure during an already high-risk external operation. Your perception of those events was undoubtedly affected by the extreme stress of the situation. And Marcus? Was it stress that made black fluid leak from his eyes while something else spoke through his mouth? She made a note on her tablet. Pilot Reeves experienced a severe reaction to the pressure differential, resulting in burst blood vessels in his conjunctival membranes. His communication difficulties were likely related to the same physical trauma. They had an explanation for everything. Neat, scientific, entirely plausible if you hadn't been there. If you hadn't felt the ancient malevolence reaching into your mind. If you hadn't seen the impossible. Night had fallen by the time they finished with me. I knew this only because they finally moved me to a small cabin on the ship rather than the interrogation module. The room had a narrow bed, a tiny bathroom, and a porthole showing darkness outside. My clothes had not been returned. Instead, I found a standard Navy jumpsuit laid out on the bed. No shoes, no personal items. The door locked from the outside. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Parker was dead. Marcus and I had nearly joined him. We'd encountered something ancient and incomprehensible 7 miles beneath the ocean's surface. And now the same people who had sent us there were working overtime to construct a narrative that stripped away the truth, replacing it with equipment malfunctions and pressure-induced hallucinations. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It opened before I could respond. A young naval officer entered carrying a tray with food, a sandwich, an apple, bottled water. "Thought you might be hungry, ma'am," he said, setting the tray on the small desk. His manner seemed genuinely sympathetic, a stark contrast to the clinical handling I'd received all day. "Thank you," I said, suddenly aware of how long it had been since I'd eaten. "Do you know what's happening with Pilot Reeves, the man I surfaced with?" The officer hesitated. "I'm not supposed to discuss that." "Please," I said, keeping my voice low. "I just need to know he's okay." He glanced at the door, then back to me. "He's in medical, that's all I know." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, ma'am, I'm sorry about Specialist Collins. He seemed like a good guy during prep." The simple human acknowledgement of Parker as a person rather than a subject or casualty nearly broke me. "He was," I managed. "Thank you." After the officer left, I ate mechanically, barely tasting the food. My mind kept returning to the artifact, to the entity it contained or represented. What was it? How long had it been down there? And most troublingly, had we truly escaped its influence? Or had we brought something back with us? I thought of Marcus with black fluid leaking from his eyes. "In medical," the officer had said. Were they treating him or studying him? Sleep came fitfully, haunted by dreams of darkness and singing. Of Parker's face twisted in terror. Of Marcus speaking with a voice not his own. I woke several times gasping for breath, convinced I could hear the singing growing louder around me. Morning brought another knock, another naval officer, different from the night before. This one was older, his manner brisk and impersonal. "You're scheduled for final debriefing at 0800, he informed me. "Shower facilities are available. You have 20 minutes. The final debriefing took place in yet another room of the modular structure. This one was larger, set up more like a conference room than an interrogation chamber. 3 people waited inside, the gray-haired official from yesterday, a woman in a dark suit I hadn't seen before, and most surprisingly, months had passed since the Mariana Trench, yet the darkness followed me home. I woke gasping for air in the middle of the night, sheets soaked with sweat, the singing echoing in my head. The same dream always. Parker screaming as he was dragged away, Marcus with black fluid leaking from his eyes, and something massive rising from the ocean floor, patient and ancient and hungry. I stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. 4 in the morning. The 3rd night this week I'd been ripped from sleep by memories that wouldn't fade. My reflection looked back at me from the mirror, hair disheveled, dark circles under my eyes, cheeks hollowed by weight I'd lost and couldn't seem to regain. The woman staring back looked older than 32. "You're safe," I whispered to myself. The same ritual every time. "You're home. It's over." But I knew it wasn't over. Not really. That thing was still down there, waiting in the crushing darkness, and they were still trying to reach it. I'd been on medical leave since our return. The official diagnosis was acute stress reaction secondary to traumatic diving incident. The psychologist assigned to my case kept pushing me to talk about Parker's death, about the equipment failures, about how none of it was my fault. He never mentioned the artifact, never asked about the singing. The sessions were as much a fiction as the official mission report. My diving certification had been suspended pending psychological clearance. Not that it mattered. The thought of submersion, of pressure, of darkness, sent my heart racing and my lungs struggling for air. I couldn't even take a bath without panic clawing up my throat. I made coffee and carried it to the small table by my apartment window. Seattle sprawled below, early morning fog rolling in from the sound. Somewhere out there was the ocean, and miles beneath its surface, the thing we'd found, the thing that had found us. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Chen. My voice was rough from lack of sleep. "Hey, Chief." The voice was male, vaguely familiar. "It's Lawson. Jack Lawson from the Hawthorne." I tensed. Lawson had been one of the junior officers on the USS Hawthorne, the ship that had deployed us to the Challenger Deep. "How did you get this number?" I asked. "That's not important. Listen, I don't have much time. We need to meet." "I'm not cleared for..." "Not official channels, just you and me. I have information you need to know." I should have refused. My NDA was explicit. No contact with mission personnel outside approved channels. But the urgency in his voice triggered something in me. "When and where?" "Fremont Coffee Company, 11 today. Come alone and don't mention this to anyone." The line went dead before I could ask more questions. I spent the next several hours pacing my apartment, wondering if I was walking into some kind of test. Maybe they were monitoring me, seeing if I'd violate the terms of my silence. Or maybe Lawson really did have information, something about the artifact, about what had happened after Marcus and I were debriefed and sent home. At 10:30, I pulled on jeans and a raincoat and headed out. The coffee shop was busy, but not crowded. I found a table in the corner with a view of both the entrance and the back exit. Old habits from military training that had only intensified since the mission. Lawson arrived at exactly 11, his Navy uniform replaced by civilian clothes, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He spotted me immediately and made his way over, sliding into the chair opposite mine without ordering anything. "Thanks for coming," he said, his eyes constantly scanning the room. "I'm taking a big risk here." "What's this about, Lawson?" He leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. "They went back. 3 more times since you and Reeves came up." My stomach clenched. Back to the Northern Star? He nodded. First attempt was 6 weeks after your mission. New submersible, better shielding, different crew. They made it to the site, initiated retrieval sequence. Then, nothing. All communication lost. They didn't come back up? I asked, already knowing the answer. No. Submersible crew, everything, gone. Search and rescue found nothing. After 72 hours, they called it. I closed my eyes briefly. More lives lost. More families fed lies about accidents and equipment failures. Second attempt was 2 months ago. Lawson continued. Different approach. Unmanned retrieval drone, remote operation. Drone reached target depth, sent back visual confirmation of the Northern Star and the artifact. Then the feed went dead. Drone never returned to surface. And they still went a third time. I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. Last month, most sophisticated attempt yet. 2-vessel operation. Primary submersible with crew of 4 plus a support vessel at 3,000 feet as relay station. They actually managed to secure the artifact and begin ascent. His voice dropped even lower. Then both vessels went dark simultaneously. Support crew at surface reported hearing sounds over the comms before losing contact. Singing, I whispered. They heard the singing. Lawson's eyes widened slightly. You know about it? Parker heard it first, then Marcus, then me. I swallowed hard. It's how it communicates, how it gets inside your head. Jesus. Lawson rubbed his face. The official report said nothing about singing or whatever that thing really is. The official report is a lie. You know that. Yeah, well, I didn't know how big a lie until now. He glanced around nervously again. Look, the reason I contacted you is because they're planning another attempt. And this time, they want Reeves back on the team. Marcus? I felt a chill run through me. He'd never agree to go back down there, not after what happened. They're not exactly asking. Word is he's been under intense observation since your return, more like custody with a fancy name, and he's been deteriorating, nightmares, episodes, talking about hearing things no one else can hear. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. The artifact is still connected to him. That's what they think too. They believe he has some kind of link to it, something they can use. They'll get him killed, I said flatly, and anyone who goes with him. Lawson nodded grimly. I know. That's why I'm telling you. You're the only other person who's been down there and come back. Have you seen him? Talked to him? No. He's at a specialized research facility in Maryland, totally isolated. I sat back, mind racing. How do you know all this? You're just a junior officer. A flicker of something, shame, maybe, crossed his face. After your mission, I was assigned to the recovery data team. Analytical work, looking for patterns across all attempts. I had access to the raw data, not just the sanitized reports. He leaned closer. Chen, there's something else you should know. After each failed mission, there have been anomalies, electrical disturbances on the surface ships, equipment malfunctions, crew members reporting unusual dreams, hearing voices. The cold feeling spread through my chest. It's getting stronger. Each attempt feeds it somehow. That's what I think too. He pulled a small flash drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. Everything I have is on here. Mission logs, sensor data, crew testimonials before they were redacted, the coordinates for the facility where they're holding Reeves. I stared at the tiny device. Taking it would violate every secrecy agreement I'd signed. Why are you doing this? Because I was on the Hawthorne when Parker died. Because I helped process you and Reeves when you came back up, saw what that thing did to you both. Because 3 more crews have vanished, and they're still sending people down there. He stood abruptly. I have to go. They monitor my movements. If anyone asks, we never met. Before I could respond, he was walking away, disappearing into the light rain outside. I sat there for a long time, the flash drive heavy in my palm. Finally, I pocketed it and left. Back in my apartment, I plugged the drive into my laptop. File after file appeared. Mission logs, medical reports, sonar readings, crew manifests. I spent hours reading through them, each new document confirming my worst fears. The second mission's log ended with the pilot reporting visual distortions and auditory phenomena before communications failed. The third mission's remotely operated vehicle captured footage of the Northern Star, still impossibly intact 7 miles down, but now with strange growths along its hull, organic-looking formations that pulsed with dull red light. Most disturbing were the medical reports from the fourth mission support ship after losing contact with both submersibles. Crew members reported identical dreams, darkness, singing, something rising from the deep. 2 technicians were hospitalized after attempting to reach the singing by jumping overboard. The artifact wasn't just sitting passively on the ocean floor anymore. It was reaching out, its influence spreading beyond the abyss. I found the file on Marcus last. Medical records, psychological evaluations, brain scans showing unusual activity patterns. Notes about auditory hallucinations persisting despite isolation, and subject maintains connection to target object continues post-mission. They weren't treating him as a victim. They were studying him as a potential tool, a way to communicate with the artifact. The facility coordinates were embedded in his file, a remote government installation in rural Maryland, disguised as a psychiatric research center. Marcus had been there since a week after our debriefing. I closed the laptop and pressed my hands over my eyes. What could I possibly do against an entire government apparatus determined to retrieve this thing? I was one person, damaged and discredited, against departments with unlimited resources and authority. But I knew what was down there. I knew what it could do. And I knew they wouldn't stop until they brought it to the surface, or until it consumed enough of them to break free on its own. My phone rang again. Different, unknown number. Chen, I answered cautiously. Specialist Chen. The voice sent a chill through me, the gray-haired man from the debriefings. I believe it's time we had another conversation about your experience with Project Abyssal. My mind raced. Had they tracked Lawson to me? Were they monitoring my apartment? I'm not sure what you mean, I said, playing for time. My debriefing was completed months ago. Circumstances have changed. His tone remained clinical, detached. A car will arrive at your residence in 30 minutes to bring you to a secure briefing location. Please be ready. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, then at the laptop with Lawson's files still open. They knew. Somehow they knew I'd been given information. I quickly copied the files to an encrypted cloud storage account, then removed the flash drive and flushed it down the toilet. When the car arrived, black, unmarked, government plates, I was waiting outside my building. 2 men in suits flanked me to the vehicle, neither speaking a word. We drove for nearly an hour, eventually arriving at a nondescript office building in an industrial area south of the city. Inside, past multiple security checkpoints, I was led to a conference room similar to the one on the Hawthorne where I'd signed the false mission report. The gray-haired official sat at the head of the table, accompanied by 2 others I recognized from previous debriefings. A 4th person sat with his back to the door. When he turned, I barely suppressed a gasp. Marcus looked like a shadow of himself. Gaunt, pale, with that same haunted look I saw in my own mirror each morning. But his eyes were the worst part. They weren't empty or broken. They were alert, aware, and filled with a terrible knowledge. "Sarah," he said quietly, his voice hoarse from disuse. Specialist Chen, the gray-haired official interrupted. "Thank you for joining us promptly. Please, take a seat." I sat opposite Marcus, trying to communicate silently with my eyes. "Are you okay? What have they done to you?" "I'll be direct," the official continued. "We require your expertise for another mission to the Challenger Deep." Despite anticipating this, hearing it stated so bluntly sent a shock through me. After 3 failed attempts? After 7 more people have disappeared? His eyebrows rose slightly. I see you've been informed of classified operations beyond your clearance level. We'll address that security breach separately. You can't seriously be considering another retrieval, I said. That thing has claimed 10 lives already. 9, he corrected coldly. Specialist Collins and 8 retrieval personnel. What about the Northern Star's crew? How many were on board when it sank? A moment of silence. That information remains compartmentalized, I finished. Of course. The woman beside him slid a folder across the table. This is the operational outline for Mission Abyssal 5. You'll note several significant departures from previous approaches. I didn't touch the folder. I'm still on medical leave. My diving certification is suspended. Those restrictions have been lifted as of this morning, the official stated. Our medical team has cleared you for full duty. Without even examining me, your psychological profile indicates you're stable enough for the operation requirements. Stable enough to be expendable, you mean? Marcus made a small sound that might have been a laugh, quickly stifled. The official ignored both of us and continued. Mission Abyssal 5 will utilize a new vessel design with enhanced electromagnetic shielding and autonomous backup systems. Most importantly, it will employ a direct neural interface approach to mitigate the communication difficulties experienced in previous attempts. Neural interface? I looked at Marcus, sudden understanding dawning. You want to wire him directly to that thing? After what it did to him last time? Marcus met my gaze steadily. They believe I'm still connected to it, that I can communicate with it, negotiate with it. It's not something you negotiate with. It's ancient and malevolent, and it doesn't think like we do. It consumes, it corrupts, which is why we need someone who's experienced its influence and survived, the woman interjected. Pilot Reeves has demonstrated a unique resilience to the artifact's effects. I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? Looking at him now. I volunteered, Sarah, Marcus said quietly. I stared at him in disbelief. Why? After what it did to you? After Parker? His eyes met mine, and I saw something there, a flicker of something beyond the haunted knowledge. Purpose, determination. Because it's still in my head, he said, his voice steady despite its hoarseness. Every night, every day, calling me back, and it's getting louder. He leaned forward slightly, but I can hear something else beneath the singing now, something important. The officials exchanged glances. The gray-haired man nodded almost imperceptibly. Pilot Reeves has reported receiving information about the artifact's nature and purpose, the woman explained carefully. Information that suggests a potentially critical national security concern. What kind of information? I asked, not taking my eyes off Marcus. It's a weapon, Marcus said simply, or can be used as one, by whoever controls it. And you believe you can control it? No, but I understand it better than anyone else alive. I've spent months with it in my head, learning its language, its patterns. I turned back to the officials. So that's what this is about, weaponizing whatever's down there. Our interest is in preventing others from doing so, the gray-haired man countered smoothly. Intelligence suggests several foreign powers have detected the energy signatures from our previous retrieval attempts. It's only a matter of time before competing operations begin. Your role, the woman continued, would be supervisory. Your experience with both the artifact and with Pilot Reeves makes you uniquely qualified to monitor his condition during contact and intervene if necessary. You mean pull the plug if the thing starts taking him over again? Essentially, yes. I looked around the table at their expectant faces, then back at Marcus. And if I refuse? Then the mission proceeds without your expertise, significantly increasing the risk to all personnel, the gray-haired man replied, including Pilot Reeves. The threat was clear. They were going ahead regardless. The only question was whether I would be there to try to protect Marcus and potentially stop whatever catastrophe they were walking into. I need time to think about it, I said finally. The mission brief is in that folder. You have 24 hours to review it and provide your decision. The gray-haired man stood, signaling the end of the meeting. The security team will escort you home. As the others filed out, Marcus caught my arm. The officials paused, watching us closely. A moment with Specialist Chen, Marcus requested, given our history. The gray-haired man hesitated, then nodded once. 2 minutes. When the door closed, leaving us alone, Marcus leaned close to my ear. It's worse than they know, Sarah, he whispered urgently. It's not just a weapon, it's alive, awake, and hungry. Each mission, each death, has fed it, strengthened it. Then why are you helping them go back? His grip on my arm tightened. Because someone needs to end this. Someone who understands what we're really dealing with. His eyes bore into mine. They'll keep sending people down until they bring it up, or until it's strong enough to reach the surface on its own. What are you planning? I asked, voice barely audible. There are things I haven't told them about what I hear in the singing, about its weaknesses. A ghost of his old smile touched his lips. I need someone I trust down there with me. To help you kill it? To help me make sure it stays buried forever. His voice dropped even lower. Even if it means we stay buried with it. The door opened before I could respond. The security team waited to escort us separately. Marcus back to whatever facility they kept him in, me to my empty apartment with a mission folder and an impossible choice. During the drive home, I stared out the window at the Seattle rain, thinking of darkness and depth and singing, of Parker's screams and Marcus's haunted eyes, of the thing waiting patiently at the bottom of the world. The car stopped outside my building. As I stepped out, the driver handed me a sealed envelope. Your temporary security clearance and briefing schedule, he explained, should you accept the mission. I took the envelope without comment and walked inside. My apartment felt smaller, the walls closer together than when I'd left. I dropped the mission folder and envelope on the table without opening either one. Instead, I went to my closet and pulled out the small lockbox I kept hidden behind.